We're gonna do as we did yesterday now, making a new project in Adobe Premiere. And as we did yesterday, we can just name the project anything, but we don't really need to care too much about the rest of it. So let's call it here stop motion test, because that's our little initial scenario here. So, and again, we don't have to care too much about neither this sequence stuff here. Boink. Something like that. And now my computer is slowed a bit down by having to record the screen, so it will need a little time, like that. Oh, and now we have the issue of that I tried to make the resolution a bit smaller, so like that. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna import the files. And what we're gonna do is, I just heard in the radio the other day that there is a new competing app to the dating app Tinder. It's called Casual or something like that. So I thought, how about we make our own competitor to Tinder? So I came up with a concept called Twinder instead. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a dating app. So we're gonna tell a little story about a person coming to use this app, and he's trying to find someone wanting to go on a date with him. So we're going to tell that little story and going to tell how this app is being used to find a suitable date. And the same way as we did yesterday, we're going to essentially import some files here. So we can either right-click and press import, or just double-click and open the import files folder here. And now we have the assets for stop motion, and we can see we have multiple things in this folder, and we might just do as we did yesterday, just importing all of it. So we just start by importing the folder here. Whoop. And just wait a bit for the computer to finish. And what you will see in the folder with our assets is that we suddenly have a ton of images called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., 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 all the way down to that I actually took 105 images here. So what these do, you can actually see if I played them in Finder, you would be able to see that if I run through them, they actually create a little animation of a guy finding his tablet, a girl coming after figuring it out, and they hold each other's hands, and we have some other stuff. But it would be a bit tedious now if we had to go into Premiere and take all of these photos and placing them down on the timeline one by one. At least we would be spending a whole lot of time doing that. This would of course be fine if we did animatics. If we had only maybe 6 still frames and then drew them down into the time line and began to stretch them in time so they fit accordingly. But instead we're going to do a little trick that we can do in Premiere. So what I'm going to do is that we're actually going to select all of these clips, all of these 105 clips, and we're going to delete all of them. We're just going to press backspace here or right click and just clear them. So we delete them. We don't want to use them as singular clips. We're going to instead try to transform this clip into a small video by itself. So I'm going to do that by again pressing import. But now I'm going to find instead the raw images in the folder called raw images here. I'm going to find that folder. And here you can see I have all my image files, all of the 100 and something. And now if we have taken some pictures, if we then rename them so they are numerical, so they're named image 1, 2, 3, 4, if they have a numerical sequence, then we can just press the first one and then press the one called image sequence here. And if I press the image sequence and press import, then now Premiere will have created a video file instead. So now I'm actually having one file here with all the images in it. You can see here when I scrub through it, I actually have all the 105 images in one single file. Okay? Nope. Nope. Let's try again. You press import. You find the folder with the raw images and select the one called 1. And then you remember to click here with the image sequence and then press import. And then hopefully you should get a video file. I choose the files in, okay, we jump into the main folder where the assets are and find the raw images. The assets for stop motion folder. Do people have a folder with raw images in their assets folder? Okay. No, you don't. You actually need to open the folder here. So you're inside it and just select the image first of the image files, and then does this. So you don't import the folder. You're just importing one file, clicking the image sequence, and then we get this small video file, probably just called 1.jpg. How many people have the video now? I think so. Maybe we have a video. So the rest of you are having problems with it, or still? It should be that when you double-click the this file you got, you should be able to scrub through it and see that, okay, you actually have something resembling this. Some nice small figures, hand-drawn in 2 minutes. Okay, can we move on? Okay, what's interesting now, if I have selected this image, if I double-click this file now and we hit play, we will see something that is a bit disturbing for our movie, because we will see that this is really going really fast. This is of course because right now we have a movie which is playing at a traditional movie frame rate of 25 to 29 frames per second. So that goes without saying that when I have 105 frames, this is only a little more than 3 seconds long. And it might not be enough to actually convey this little narrative. So what we're going to do is that we want to actually try to lower the frame rate of this. And we're going to lower the frame rate by selecting the clip. So you have your clip up here. And then we're going up here in the top menu bar, where you have these different things. You have the menu, you have stuff like that, and you have one called clip. One called clip. So you have selected the video file in the project or in the assets folder, and then you click the clip file to the clip folder up here, and then you go down to modify. And under modify, we have one called interpret footage. And now interpret footage enables us to tell the video to assume a different frame rate than it already has. And right now we can see the frame rate is 25 frames per second. We can see that here. And now we actually wanted to have a bit longer duration. So maybe we want the frame rate to be half of what it already is. So what if I set something like 12 frames per second? Then we can see that the duration here changed from 4 seconds to 8 seconds. Now, without having seen the video, I think that 8 seconds, it's still maybe a bit too fast. So maybe we should change it just a bit down. So maybe we say that it is actually down to 8 frames per second. So we get something like a 13-second clip now. We can test this out. We can always go in and change it again. So because this will be a bit of mix and matching, seeing, okay, how can we actually make the frame rate just right for this stop motion. This is one of the strengths of Premiere, in contrary to use things like Stop Motion Studio, that if we have taken too few photos, then with Stop Motion Studio we really can't save the day. We have to go in and capture new photos. Here we can essentially just make it more rough by assuming a different frame rate. So let's start now by saying, okay, I click OK to the 8 frames per second. eraser, cut the clip in two, and then just select this one and for now just delete it. Yeah?
What's the difference between using the razor and then just
Scaling it with the red arrow. There is actually no real difference. The only thing here is that the razor is good if, let's say, I want to put something into the middle of this.
Yeah.
Then I could actually now just drag and have something put in between here. Whereas with the red one, I need to sort of edit it completely backwards. So if I had done it in my own pace now, I would just have moved this further down the timeline and then edited the clip into this. But I think it will be more beneficial for us to take it one step at a time. But really, what works for you is what matters here. So now we have our clip with this little guy walking in. He's finding his smart device. He's scanning. And then that's about it. We can always adjust the length and the frame rate later on also. But now we actually want a close-up of his app. And this is where some of you guys with Windows computers might have problems with because I have some close-ups here. I have some video close-ups of the interface of this product. I made some small videos here of me actually pressing this product. And you can see, as often happens, I turned my phone the opposite way around. So we need to also reverse this, either by flipping it or by just rotating the video. But we're actually going to just use the entire clip. So now I'm just going to drag this video 1 from the close-up folder. I'm just going to drag video 1 down here into the timeline. So I'm now going to have this video here. And you can see, because I kept the 6 frames per second timeline, the video down here becomes a bit laggy. It actually becomes a bit more slow here, and that actually benefits our video. Sort of, even though it is not stop motion anymore, it still gets this kind of stop motionly feel. It can sometimes be rather nice in these kind of videos. So we have sort of a cut where I then come in and I want to press a button here. But we need to rotate the video in order to make this work. We could, of course, use the flip we used yesterday, but we could also just go up into the effects controls, which we also worked a bit with yesterday. The effects controls where we have the motion, the opacity and stuff like that. And if I expand the motion panel, I might just as well rotate this 180 degrees. I can actually just input 180 here. So you go into motion, you find the rotation, and you just change the value from 0 to 180. Boom, like that. So now we place, and now we have something that looks okay. And we have me play. Sure.
Mine doesn't have the stop motion effect on the last one. Is it because I didn't choose that?
You probably didn't choose keep change sequence settings.
But then I just go into clip and then change it for that.
Yeah, but yeah, you can do that. But for the the purpose of this video, the normal video would essentially work fine. It's just if you have it in this more stop-motionly feel, it will just look a bit more it will fit better with the visual feel. Okay, so did everybody manage to rotate the clip? Okay, cool. So, but what we want to do now is we want to simulate that when the guy has just about pressed his finger down on this icon, we want sort of the icon to change. So I have another video here called video 2. And you can see in video 2, the icon has changed into a nice pink color. Like that, where I just remove my hand again. So here we again could just take the entire clip, drag it down to the timeline, like this, and do the same trick again. Go into effects control. I just rotate it all like that, boink, like that, Yeah, you had to press it.
Still, so it went through. We don't do that now.
No, because we would. Yeah, that's actually a good point. If I had pressed the icon, then I would begin to animate it. So
That's for animating.
then I would essentially, if I pressed this toggle animation now and did something like this, and said, okay, over here in the end of the clip, it would be 180 degrees, then we would have it going like this, right?
Okay.
So that is essentially the difference here. It's only when you want to add artificial motion that we use the toggle animation. So even though this looks kind of cool, it's probably not that beneficial for what we want to achieve here. So I just delete this animation again. And I'm just going to stick with the 180 degrees. What is, however, evident, probably for you guys, is that my finger here is placed a bit too long for it actually to look like the button is pressed when you play here. It's a bit too long, so we might actually go to somewhere like just when the hand has pressed down, maybe around here. And around here, we want to actually make the cut. So as we talked about yesterday, if we want to make these small adjustments, we can actually just overwrite the rest of this clip with this clip where the movie is already red, where the button is already red. So I can just drag this video 2 now and drag it over to the pointer here. So I just overwrite now this part of the video. So now I have something that looks more like this. Quink. And we can see there is a rather abrupt transition. We can fix that later. But for now, it's actually good, because now we have, okay, like that, something like that, okay. And maybe we will cut this a bit shorter too, afterwards too. But the next clip we want is that we have a clip here, video 3, where we can see that there is a girl. And we can see here that I'm actually trying to press here to want to connect with this girl. So we're gonna drag again, same procedure as last year. Video 3 down. And of course we're gonna rotate it because I was sloppy when I made the clip. So we're gonna rotate it. And maybe we're gonna do the same procedure here, that in the same moment that the finger is pressed, I'm gonna sort of set the timer down here, there. Because then, when I have my clip 4, you see again, I've used this pink thing to highlight. So again, we're gonna exchange and overwrite down here. So I can now, already now, just drag the video down and already now overwrite to the point where I want the change to happen, because I've already found it down in the timeline here. So now I just have to rotate it, rotate, and now the transition has already been made. So we began to speed things up here, right? Something like that. We simulated a button press, wink. And then what I want to see here is maybe we should sort of figure out whether she actually also wants to connect with me. So I have this this video where just like in Tinder, it gives me a message saying, okay, yeah, I'm not a user of Tinder, I'm happily in a relationship, but I know the app at least. But you get a match. So what we're gonna have now, we're gonna have a transition to this point here, and maybe we could say, okay, there could be some loading time here. It could be that, okay, it's just thinking a bit, and then this screen should come with, okay, yes, you had a match. Congratulations. You will get lucky or something. So we have, yay, Anna has agreed to meet. Smiley face. So, if this is our interactions, we found someone who was close by scanning. Wait. We figured out that that was Anna. We tried to connect to her, and Anna wants to connect to us too. How lucky. then maybe what we would like to do is that now we want to find the last part of the clip where Anne meets up with our actor here. So we need to go back and find our stop motion clip again, the one we imported in the beginning here. So we're gonna take now, instead of having the beginning of the clip, we're just gonna have here right before Anne comes into the picture, and we're gonna add the margin. Now I don't have the button here because my resolution is so low right now, but it is just the button right to the left of this one called margin. So we make our margin, and then Anne comes into the picture. They drop their phones because they fall madly in love in the instant they see each other, so they just throw away their 6,000 kroners Galaxies and iPhones and hold hands. So we just have our mark out here. And now of course we can do the insert, or we can just drag the video down here because there is no audio in this clip, so we can just drag this video file down into the timeline. So now we have, congratulations, Anne has agreed to meet, and now Anne arrives with her smartphone, and sweet music happens. So this is the basic cut of our little stop motion movie, but right now it is still a bit unexpressive. So what we might want to do here is that we might want to, first of all, I think we should crop the images here. There are some not that nice white elements from the stand scan still visible. So I think we're going to apply some cropping effects now. And the cropping is an effect we can just find over here in video effects, in the effects panel we worked with yesterday too. And it is placed not under distort but under transform as well. Yeah, under transform. You can always also just search for the effects. When you begin to learn which effects are cool and which effects are worth working with, you will just begin to search for them. But for now we will use the crop here. So I'm going to drag the crop effect on top of my stop motion clip here, like this. Boink. And just like we did yesterday, we'll then need to go into effects controls to find the cropping effect. And we can see down the line here we have now gotten an effect called crop. And of course we can animate the cropping. We can animate cropping to actually have things fade out or being deleted again. So if we want something where every time you step on a line, then the line follows you around for like navigation, we could begin to animate stuff like that. But for now we just want to make some permanent cropping of this video. So I can just drag these different corners to say, okay, we at least want to remove something in the left side of the video. So I'm going to drag this left cropping up in the effects control, finding crop, and then begin to drag here. And I'm going to remove the white space here. I'm going to do the same thing in the right side of the screen, like that. And we're also going to crop just a wee bit in the button. So we delete the white space. Something like this. Now he comes in without all this white stuff at least. And we begin to scan. And now the nice element is that we know that this cropping effect that we just made here, that will also fit in the last clip. So what we can do is that we can right click on this crop. Right click on the cropping effect. So when we have made the crop, we can right click on it, choose copy, and then we can find this clip in the end. We don't have to make the cropping once more here. We can just select the last clip with Anne, select the effects control on that clip, and then just right click and select paste and insert the effect. And then it has cropped the video automatically. So in that way, it's all about, and this is an important lesson when doing this stuff, it's all about reusing the same effects again and again, so you don't have to double up your work. And as soon as you learn to do this, that is when you essentially can go into this really rapid sketching mode. Because now we can essentially do the same thing, because we can see here in this video clip, it is more or less the same thing we need to do. We need to crop a little away from the side here, but we only have to do it once. So I can take the first clip, with the smartphone interface, and I can drag the crop on top of it, dragging the crop here, and then I can just make the crop to the right side like this. Oh yeah, and of course the right side now is the left side because we flipped it 180 degrees. But maybe just do something like this so it's proportional in each side.
Can you show me again how I get the crop stuff from the first video to
Sure.
the last one?
You just select it here, right click and copy.
Oh, okay.
And in the next clip, just somewhere, and just click paste. The copying and pasting of effects is really one of the major time savers to begin to work with here, because you can see now that I made this crop and I just copy, and you can also just use Command C or Control C and actually do it in that way. So now I can actually just go through each of these clips, doink, and doink, and doink. Oh, and like that. Yeah.
Question: if the dragging cursor doesn't appear when you mark crop, is there a reason? So
When you you do your yeah.
No, up there.
Okay, yeah.
There. So when you mark,
When I select it
select it,
and expand it,
and then over in the frame where you have to crop.
and it doesn't show.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
This is the first version.
Yeah, it's probably because you have your marker here, but you have selected the wrong clip. So you both have to have the marker and you have to select the clip down in the timeline. That's the 9 out of 10. That's nearly always a problem when we apply effects. That's actually because we forget to select the clip. Because the timer here we can move, it does not select the clip. It only shows what's in the timeline. So we always have to select the clip also. So good that you mentioned that. That's a good lesson learned. It didn't help.
No, I don't know why. Because I did it the first time. Is there a difference between the video, the first file and the second file?
Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. Let's get back to that single issue after this. Now, the next thing we could do, now we've cropped our video, so now we have some nice framing of this stuff. Now it could be nice to actually add some context. And the context that we're going to add is, I spent yesterday afternoon in Malmö visiting some friends over there. And we went past the Slakthuset over there. So I thought, let's use Slakthuset in Malmö. Their old building now, a cultural institution. Let's use that as sort of the context. Because in that way we can also say it's the Swedes who use all of these dating apps, it's not us reasonable Danes and wherever you're coming from, Hungary and stuff like that. But we, let's use Slakthuset. And we have an image here in our assets folder called Slakthuset.jpg. And now we're beginning to work with video layers, because we want to make this video the background of our entire story here. But then we run into a problem, because right now all of the videos we've made has been made in video layer 1. So that is actually the background layer. But we have some other video layers here, and we can always right click and add more tracks if we need to add more here. We can always right click and add more. So what I'm gonna need to do now is that I'm gonna make a drag selection of all of my clips. And then we're essentially gonna move them, drag them up until video layer 2 instead. So I drag from video layer 1 up until video layer 2. Because in this way I can now put in a background. I can now put in the Slakthuset JPEG as a background to our video here. So okay, you start out by dragging a selection and then you can essentially move all of your clips at once. Sometimes it helps using this down here to zoom in and out on the timeline if you want to select all of it at once. That also might be if we wanted to make a title screen before an introduction to our sketch. We could also drag the entire clip backwards, for example, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We can, yeah. Of course, we will have a problem with one like this, because if we began to expand that now, we would begin to miss some of the top and the bottom of the video. But you could essentially just, if we wanted to do it, we could essentially just now, or let's take this one. If we take the first one, we can always go in Effects Control, and we can control the scale of the video essentially. So we could just actually scale the video up. Oh, hello. Scale it up to fit the frame size. That would be the trick to do it, right? That we can essentially just, and we can reposition it. And now I'm going to show you a thing I didn't show you yesterday, but it might actually be beneficial for you guys, because if I wanted to add some clips together, I can actually also click the icon here. There is an icon of square here. And if I click that in motion, then I actually get the opportunity to select my video clip as just a file in itself. So I can just begin to drag it around like I want over here. So I actually don't have to tweak the specifics here. I can just drag and drop it around. So this is neat if I have, for an example, you don't have to follow along now. Now I'm just going to show you some tricks here. If I had a heart, for an example, and I wanted to show that, then I can have the heart be on top of here, and I can just move this over here, and I can select the heart, select that one, and I can begin to really position things around here. But we might also want to, let's say we wanted some a split screen effect. Let's go 24, Jack Bauer style on this stuff. Then I could also drag a clip over here and then scale this down, and we could actually make a split screen where two clips were playing at once, right? So there are essentially the timeline is just a canvas where we can drag and drop, mix and match different things. Okay, but that's not what we're going to do now. So I'm going to see if I can save us back to where we started out here. I haven't placed the backdrop yet, but we're going to do that now. We just got sidetracked here. Now we're again going to find the Slagtuse JPEG file. Okay, Slagtuse JPEG file. Now we're going to drag that down to the video layer 1. So now it's in the background of this video layer, and we can't see it right now because the screen is still blue. But now we can begin to apply these blue screen or green screen effects. Now, green screen and blue screen is actually just a fancy word for what's called keying effects. That's actually what we do. You key things out. That is the correct technical term for what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is that we select the video, the stop motion video, and it's important that we select the video in this layer now. And then we're going to go to our effects panel over here. After we've placed the Slagtuse JPEG in video layer 1, we select the stop motion clip, and then we try to find the folder called keying effects. There's an entire folder here. And now there are two different ways of doing keying for the purpose of sketching. One of them is the fine detailed one called the color key, and the other one is called the ultra key. And it is, yes, pronounced ultra key because it is really an ultra effect. They are used for a bit different things. The ultra key is really, really good for rapidly applying some green screen effects. For example, if we have some actors up here and we have not spent hours making the correct lighting setup to actually remove all the shadows and stuff like that. But for the purpose of this sketch, it might be beneficial for us to just drag a color key. Dragging a color key on top of our stop motion clip. So I drag a color key on top of the motion clip, stop motion clip. And then in effects control, I now have the option of a color key down here. I have all the other effects that we've mixed and matched, but I also now have a color key. And the color key has this pipette tool, a tool which I can select what is it for a color I want to remove now. So I can select this pipette. So I get this sort of cursor of a selector tool, just like when we select colors in Photoshop or something like that. So I select the pipette, and then I select a color which represents more or less the backdrop of this stop motion I've made. So of course that would also be if you've printed out a full colored background in pink, then it would be pink, or green, it would be green. So now I click on select here, but nothing happened yet. And that's because I have to adjust the color tolerance here. So how tolerant, how aggressive should Premiere now be in actually removing these blue colors? And you can see when I begin to drag this one, we can see that it begins to remove the background. But we can also see a thing that if I adjust this tolerance too much, I begin to eat away and disintegrate our poor actor here. And it can actually make for a nice effect if we want to animate a person being disintegrated. But since we're not in the business of designing death rays, we should probably adjust it a bit back here. This is one of the problems with using color keys, because if we had filmed a real life actor, if we have filmed me for an example, in front of the green screen, then my genes would probably rather quickly be having a color similar to the blue screen. So what we would have to do then is to not just have one color key, but maybe drag down another color key. So we actually now have two color keys. And then I can use a different nuance of the color to actually begin to remove shadows and stuff like that. So we can sit and remove, tweak each color key, remove different colors from the picture. So that's what we're going to do if we have a shadow on what we're recording on a green screen, which might be a darker shade of green than the green screen itself. Then we select another color key, pipette that color, try to remove that. So it can rapidly become some nitpicking, but for now it seems to work rather nice. We have our guy, he's coming into the picture. But hey, the image was too short. So this is where we use the trick with the red cursor we covered yesterday, selecting the clip of the Slagthuset and then making sure that we also drag that to actually be extended to the entirety of the clip. So now we have this guy walking into the scene, but we can see right now it's still a bit artificial because the image file is too little, too small. It seems that he goes in front of some kind of screen instead of actually being there. So what we could do now is that we could do as we just talked about, select the image file and then scale this one up to actually maybe be the size of the entire clip, something like this. And maybe we position it a bit up also, so it actually looks like that he's on level with it somehow. Something like this. And now what we're going to do is, because now of course it would look like that he's coming in like this, but if we would have a problem like things coming in from the side, then we would have the problem they would just be coming in out of nowhere suddenly. So what we could do is we could again achieve the power of just selecting our submotion clip, selecting the crop, and then I might just as well select the clip and just paste the crop onto that also, and then have the Slagthuset here and move it so that it fits what I'm trying to do here. So we are sure that the scope of what we're doing, if something comes in from the sides, it won't just come out of nowhere. But now we at least have it so that it looks like he's coming into the scenery. And we can sit and position all of this, but as long as you get the idea that we can select these things and we can begin to just drag them around and position the elements just as we would do if we were doing things physically. But now we actually have this. Now we have him standing here at Slagthuset, coming into the picture. And what we can do now, of course, is that we can go back here to the end of our clip, and we might just want the exact copy of this. And a shortcut to do that, I might as well, of course, drag the entire Slagtuset file down again, copy all of the effects, and do it like that. That would be rather fast. But what I can also do is that I can press and hold the alternative button, the Alt button, on my keyboard. So I can press and hold Alt on the keyboard, and then drag the background, drag the Slagtuset background. I will automatically make a copy of that specific file, complete with animations and all of it, with the effects and all of it applied to it. So I can just press down Alt, and then I can make as many copies as I want of this one. And we know over here that the color of the background is the same, so maybe I should just select the color key over here, and again, reuse what we already did, copy that one, go to the end of our clip, select that clip, and copy the effect. So you can see it's the same basic effect that we're using again and again right now. And now we have something that works rather nice. They're meeting in front of Slagtuset, and of course we expand the clip to fit the bill here. And this works rather nicely. Now, it would also be nice to have some kind of background to our interface total picture here. Interface near total subjective photo here. But that should not be this photo, because then it would be like if I expanded this one like this, and if we applied the color key here too, then it would be looking kind of weird, right? That wouldn't be nice. So what I propose we do instead is that instead we take a different instance. We take a new copy from our assets here of the Slagtuset. We apply it here, and we just extend that to the entirety of our close-up photos. And maybe I just apply the color key, because again it's the same color, so I can just copy the one I've already made once and just apply that to all of my clips here, so we can have the transparency. Just apply the pasting, whoop, whoop, and whoop. So what we want to do here, you can see here actually, here comes one of the problems. You can see actually here some of the clip has actually already been disintegrated a bit by my high color keying here. What I can always do to adjust this is just to adjust the tolerance a wee bit down here. So this one should maybe just be like that. Then it works. The same goes here. But again, it's a sketch, so it doesn't have to look that beautiful. We can just say, okay, it just have to work like this. Okay. But what we want to do is that we're going to select the entire new layer of the Slagtuset here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scale it up. We're going to scale this one up, and we're going to try to position it so that it might be something like over here, just so it looks like it's kind of zoomed in. Maybe position it a bit up here, something like this maybe. Now this still doesn't look that convincing, because we can still see, yeah, it's not the right angle, stuff is wrong with it. So maybe what we want to achieve here is just to get some contextual feel. So what about blurring the background? So we have sort of that we only have one focus here, and that is the interface. Fortunately, we have in our video effects, down in the effects panel, we have one called Blur and Sharpen. And here we have one called, we have different effects of blur, but I think Gaussian Blur might be an interesting effect to apply here. So we find the one called Gaussian Blur. It is too fast? Okay. We selected the JPEG file. We scaled it up to something looking like maybe 300% or so, and just reposition it so, somewhere where the actor stood in the picture. So we know that he stands here over in the left side, so maybe we need something that looks like that he's also in the left side here. Everybody with me that up until this point? We didn't get to do anything with it yet, but what we're going to do with the Gaussian blur, when you find that under blur and sharpen in the effects panel, we are going to just drag it on top of the background here, on top of the Slack-toothed JPEG. And when I've done that, I get the Gaussian blur down here. And what I can now do is I can begin to adjust the level of blur to the background. And you can begin to see here that we can begin to make it out of focus. So if we do something like this now, we will still have the idea that this is in the same context as the clip before, but it will be much more focused around the interaction we have made here. So something like this, something like this. It works rather neatly, and now we have the background as sort of our common thing in this video clip. But now we can see when we play this that maybe we want, for an example, this part to be a bit shorter. That's what begins to happen when we learn something, when we see this. Okay, this interface element should not be here for that long. So maybe we can always just begin to adjust these things. So now we just select both of the clips. If I wanted to adjust the length of the clip, I just need to remember that now I have more than one video clip. So I need to select the entirety of the layers. Just select those, and then drag them if I want to, for example, shorten this clip a bit, like this. Okay? So we're more or less there. We don't have that long before we're actually done. What I'm thinking is we should add some romance now. We need some good old-fashioned romance. So what I think could be interesting here is to maybe, if we zoomed in a bit, at least on my computer I need to zoom in here. At the moment these two people are holding their hands. We would like to now add a freeze frame. So we'd like for the video to sort of come to a stop and say, okay, right here, right now, we want to have some pause in the action. So what I can do here is that I'm going to, first of all, make a small video clip. So I'm going to use the razor tool to cut this little snippet of the video. Use the razor tool to cut just this little bit of image here where they have actually held their hands. And what we're going to do here is that we are then going to select this small clip, this small little one. So when you have selected that one, we can right-click it. And when we right-click, we get all of yesterday we had this one scale to frame size, for an example, if we have a clip and we want it to scale out into each end. But we also have one here called add a frame hold. And that will essentially tell Premiere to say, okay, at this point in time, you should stop playing the video. You should essentially make a still photo out of what we're playing here. You can also do that with video with actors. If you suddenly, let's say you have a phone and you want to show interface elements, but you want the image to stand still so you can actually position things precisely, then you can just add it, freeze the frame, have your interface elements, unfreeze it again. So if I add this frame hold now, I can actually drag this clip as a still photo. So now this entire thing has just become a photo. Okay? So I right-clicked and I pressed the add frame hold, and then suddenly I have a video whereas they do like this, and then the clip just extends. And of course I need to extend my my background also. And we can see here actually the color tolerance is a bit bad, so I'm just gonna adjust that like that. So what what I'm thinking, just to add a little bit of animation to this besides our stop motion, I think we should use this really nice heart that I found. This one. This should be the indicator of that these two guys have now found love. So we're gonna add this to another video layer now, but instead of adding it behind the stop motion as we did with the green screen, we're gonna add it on top of the video clip. So now we're actually gonna use the video layer 3. So I'm gonna take this red hot JPEG file and drag it on top of the video layer 3. So I take the red hot, drag it on top of video layer 3, down here in the end of our clip. And I just initiate by, if I drag it down, I just initiate by extending the length of the clip. Just extend it like we used to do with the red cursor. So it takes the entirety of the clip to actually be there. But we want to add some motion to this. So I think we're going to go into effects control. And then maybe we should have it as sort of a heart pounding, like do-doom, 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 to see that this thing is happening. So what I'm thinking here is that we should add maybe a scale to this. So I want to animate it so that in the first part of the movie, the clip here, it should actually not be visible. In the first clip, the heart should not be visible. So I can either scale it in this way, or I can press the square up here and position it where I want to, and then scale it in that way. I can scale it both ways, right? Both by the numerical values and by dragging and dropping. But we want to scale it all the way down here. And then we're going to toggle animation. So now we're going to press this timer, this button toggling animation, so it becomes blue. So now we added a keyframe, saying, okay, at this specific point in time, the video has assumed a scale of 0. And then I think we're going to try something where we say, maybe 1 second later, 1.5 seconds later or something, the heart should have scaled up to something like this. So we can actually see them begin to fall in love. Maybe it actually also needs to be repositioned a bit. Maybe I also need to just adjust so that it is in the middle of them. Something like this. So now we have a small animation here, the heart coming forward. Doing. And maybe we want it to pound a bit. So if I move the cursor again a couple of seconds, maybe like this, so it's the same sort of distance, I can say, okay, at this point in time, the heart should have shrunken again, just a wee bit, maybe down to 5%. And maybe then a couple of seconds later, maybe the same distance, we want it to have grown big again. And maybe we actually just want it to, in the end, just go all goofy and say, okay, it's just gonna fill the entire screen in one big happy love affair, like that. And then we made an animation of the heart, wink, slowly beginning to build up here, up until the grand finale where, wow, they just grows and grows and grows, and they're just happy. Wing. Like that. So, and maybe we just extend it for a wee bit more so we can have sort of the end, like this giant heart just being there. And that is essentially the same thing. And we can begin to, of course, tweak the animation by just dragging the keyframes. If we want it to be faster or slower, momentums between this stuff. If I wanted the heart pounding to be a lot faster, I can just move the keyframes closer to each other. So now it's something like this instead. A bit faster. And then it's first after here that it begins really to grow slowly, slowly, slowly. But maybe I actually want to say that it should already have grown to the max here. So we can sit and tweak the animation parts as we think is most feasible for our project. So something like this. Their love grows, and then we're more or less done. So the last 10 minutes before the lunch break, we're going to use adding some sound effects to this movie. And you can see here some of the video clips actually has some sounds already. And we can of course do like we did yesterday by right-clicking the clips, pressing unlink, and then delete the audio layer. But since I was just sitting at my hotel room doing this in pure silence, there isn't really a lot of noise here, so we don't want to do it now. It would actually be a waste of our time. Instead, we're going to try to add some sound effects and some music to the video, because we didn't cover sound effects yesterday. So what I'm thinking is that we want some sound to come when he begins to scan with his phone. So about here, when in the beginning of the clip, just before the first scanner comes, I think that we should add some really realistic radar sounds. I have something here. Yeah, that's great. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to figure out what part of this I'm going to use. But this might actually be fine, so just take it from the beginning of the clip, drag it down into, let's say, just audio layer 1, because then we can just override the other sound effects as we go. I drag it down here. So maybe I wanted to continue a bit into this scenario here, but then I also wanted to stop. So I just select the red cursor down in the audio timeline, and I just drag it to shorten the clip down. So now I have something like this. So now we want a button press. We want the sound of him actually pressing a button. Not that a smartphone would do that, but to emphasize the action, we might actually benefit from this. So at this moment, just as when the shift comes to the pink element, I think we should add a clicking noise. We have something here. A nice and loud. So I added the sonar, the radar here, shortened it, and then I'm gonna figure out when should the clicking sound be. It should be right here. Right here the clicking sound should come. So we find it in our timeline and just drag down the clicking sound like this. And there's a bit of a long wait here. So maybe we'll do something about that afterwards here. Maybe we'll add some fading effect or something like that to make this be a bit more. But we're gonna find where is the next click. That is just around here. Just gonna drag another clicking sound down here. Like that. And then maybe we want sort of a congratulations sound. Somebody in this world likes you and wants to meet with you. So I found this nice little wave file called Magic. So this one is kind of awesome. So let's do it so that it transists into this when he actually. Ba-ba-dum! Yay! Someone wanted to meet with you. Someone found the audio. So now we have some sound effects, some basic sound effects to emphasize the focus of the video, right? Some radar, some clicking, and then maybe before we add more sound, we should actually look for something to do with these very long pauses. Of course, we could cut the video shorter, but we might also do as we did yesterday, apply some transition effects. However, when applying transition effects here in the effects panel, in the video transitions, there is this little problem that when applying it to stop motion, which has a very low frame rate, the transition also happens in very slow frames, so we sometimes will have some problems with adjusting it. But you can see here, if we try to make a cross dissolve, where the two pictures are blended together between this and here, you can see how it will look. For first, it will fill up a lot of the time actually, and you can see insufficient media. This transition will contain repeated frames. That is okay. That is just saying that some of the frames of the stop motion will be continued over into the transition. But now we get something like this. Something like that. And of course we can double click the transition down in the timeline, and we can try to adjust it, say, okay, couldn't this actually happen a bit faster? Maybe adjust it to 2 seconds instead. So again, we can double click and adjust the length of the transition, right? So we have something like this now. That's better. And we might want to do the same trick over here also. Cross dissolve between these two. Say okay to the repeated frames. Maybe adjust it a bit down. So we have sort of a transition also over to our magic effect here. Da 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 da. Okay. I think we're beginning to get there now. So the last thing is that we could use this, I found a little soundtrack here called Julie Maxwell something. And we could just drag this one down to be our main soundtrack for the movie. And then of course this soundtrack is way, way longer than our clip. So we can use the razor tool to just cut it in the end to make an easy peasy way of deleting the rest of the clip here. So we now have video with music, sound effects, clicking that sounds, something like that. And they lived happily ever after, right? The music actually becomes rather dystopic in the end. Yeah? If you want to speed up the animation, you can always find the keyframes here and then just adjust, drag them closer to each other. If I did something like this, for an example, then you would see that the animation becomes faster. Because the time between the change that we tell it to do becomes shorter. And we can, of course, also we can make it even faster if we wanted to really beat fast. Of course, here it will have this kind of laggy effect because it's stop motion, so the frame rate is rather low. But if we animated it in a normal 25 frames per second video, then there wouldn't be a problem. You can see now it's a lot faster, right? And then slow in the end. So we can adjust that regardless of what we like, and we could add more animation. We could animate so that the heart also moves. So it actually, in the end of the movie, it has actually gone up in the sky or something like that. So we actually have it float up in the sky here. That is all about toggling animation with the effect we want to animate. And of course we can animate rotation, we can animate crops, we can animate every effect you add can be animated basically. So it's also to think a bit creative about what should we actually try to do here. Now this covers the basic stop motion. And of course also if you make a rough storyboard, if you make a storyboard of your ideas, and just capture still frames of that, the same thing applies here. You just drag down the individual frames, add some effects, maybe some sound effects or some audio or some text fields. You can always go up in the title up here and add new title as we did yesterday. And then you have the text editor, right, where you can begin to add text also. And they lived happily ever after. And of course we need this nice one we found yesterday, the I'm sucker now for the gold font. Like that. So we can also, of course, add texts and add those to the movie as well. Say, okay, if I want some text to go here. This is actually, if I wanted and they lived happily ever after here, I would actually need to add a new video layer. I would need to add a video track up here in the top here, saying add, right click and add tracks, and say, okay, I want another video track. So I actually had a fourth layer. You don't have to follow this, it's just me showing you some of the possibilities, right? That we can, we could actually apply something like this, have it there, and say, okay, this kind of suddenly then fades in maybe. And they lived happily ever after too. Something like that. We can mix and match. It is essentially just our canvas and we can mix things together. This is what you're going to primarily do today. Either do animatics, just capture still frames and use the stand scans to capture them, or just make stop motion. And then we will cover, now we cover some really basic green screening effect. Tomorrow in the short lecture before, tomorrow morning, we will cover how to do it with more real green screening with real people. And then we'll use the assets for green screening there. But now you have 4 hours, including the lunch here, to actually begin to get started making some stop motion or animatic assets and try to experiment with these things. And I'm here the rest of the day until 4 or something to give some hands-on help to you guys. Okay? Is that a plan? Nice. Let's have lunch and get sketching.